I always thought I had it all, a perfect marriage, a flawless family, and a life filled with love and happiness. For years, I was blissfully unaware of the secret my wife had been keeping from me, a secret so devastating that any man would struggle to forgive it. I first met Katie a decade ago at a disco, a night forever etched in my memory. The energy in the club was electric, the music pulsing through the air, and amidst the flashing lights, Katie stood out, vibrant, carefree, lost in the rhythm of the music. She was easily one of the most captivating dancers on the floor, her movements so natural, so full of life. During a short break, a small group of us gathered near the DJ booth, trying to convince him to play some of our favorite tracks. As the opening beats of a well-known Scooter song filled the room, I saw Katie chatting animatedly with someone nearby. Then, in an instant, the music abruptly changed to something completely unexpected. I turned my head in surprise, and there she was, grinning mischievously, sticking out her tongue at me in playful defiance. The moment caught me off guard, and yet I felt an undeniable spark. When the night finally wound down, I sought her out, unable to resist the pull she had on me. With a smile, I asked, "Was that on purpose?" She laughed, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "Of course. What? Did you think you were the coolest one here?" I chuckled, playing along. "Well, if I'm not, then I suppose I'm not a slug either. In that case, how about you walk me home?" That was the beginning of something special. As we strolled through the quiet, dimly lit streets, conversation flowed effortlessly between us. There was a calmness in the air, a serenity that made the night feel almost surreal. But then a strange sensation crept over me. I had the unsettling feeling that someone was following us. It wasn't until we reached Katie's home that I realized just how closely the figure had been trailing behind. After saying a brief goodbye, I turned to head back, but I had barely taken a few steps when the shadowy presence materialized into a large figure standing directly in my path. It was a man from the disco, the one who had spent most of the night leaning against the wall, watching everything with a brooding intensity, as if he were just waiting for the right moment to explode into action. And now that moment had come. Without warning, he swung a massive fist toward me. "Hey, little brother, don't think I didn't notice you with Katie. Stay away from her," he growled, his voice thick with menace. Instinct took over. My years of karate training kicked in, and before he could even register what was happening, I dodged his punch and countered with a swift, well-aimed kick to his groin. He crumpled to the ground, gasping in pain. I stood over him, hands on my hips, my voice steady and firm. "Get lost, big guy. If I see you again, I'll put you in a cast." The man struggled to his feet, his face contorted in pain and humiliation, but he said nothing. Instead, he staggered away into the night. I thought that was the end of it, just another strange encounter in an otherwise perfect evening. But the surprises weren't over. Before I could even process what had just happened, Katie suddenly appeared at the doorway. Without hesitation, she threw her arms around my neck, holding me tight. "You idiot," she murmured, her voice laced with affection. He wouldn't let me pass. And just like that, everything clicked into place. One swift kick to a bully's groin, and somehow, I had won Katie's heart. Fast forward 10 years, and here we were, happily married, raising our wonderful son, Ron. In just a week, he would be celebrating his birthday, and we were determined to make it the most special day of his life. We had the perfect gift in mind, a game console he had been dreaming about for months. The excitement in our home was contagious as we planned every detail, wanting nothing but joy for our little boy. Our guest list was set, family, friends, and of course a bunch of lively kids eager to celebrate with Ron. The only thing left to decide was the entertainment. Katie had an idea. "Sweetheart, Lev's team was a hit at Alex's party. Everyone loved them. What do you think about hiring them?" I had no objections, so I made the call and booked 2 animators for the big day. When the party finally arrived, everything seemed perfect. Our home buzzed with laughter, the air filled with the delicious aroma of birthday treats, and the children's excitement was contagious. The animators arrived right on time, dressed as a cowboy and an Indian, bringing with them a bundle of fun. The games began, and for the first time in a long while life felt utterly simple, joyous, unburdened, complete. But what I didn't know then was that this seemingly perfect day would be the last one before everything I believed in came crashing down. I had noticed the cowboy, but it was the Indian who caught my attention. There was something oddly familiar about him, a nagging feeling that tugged at my memory. And then, after a few moments, it clicked. The man beneath the costume was none other than DJ Paul, the same DJ who had spun tracks at the disco where I had first met Katie all those years ago. When the party wrapped up, I made my way over to him, eager to reminisce. "Paul, I didn't recognize you at first. I used to dance to your beats at the disco," I said, smiling at the unexpected reunion. The Indian grinned, his eyes lighting up with recognition. "I remember you too. And Katie, right?" he replied, glancing in her direction. We exchanged a few more words, laughing about old times before saying our goodbyes. It was a pleasant, fleeting moment, one I didn't think much of at the time. Little did I know, that encounter would mark the beginning of my family's collapse. An hour later, after the last of the guests had left, the house had settled into an eerie quiet. I was about to unwind when the doorbell rang, followed almost instantly by the sound of raised voices. The sharp edge in Katie's tone sent a jolt of unease through me. I moved toward the front door, my mind clouded with confusion. And then I saw him. Standing in the doorway was the same man from that alley 10 years ago, the one I had taken down with a single kick. His massive frame loomed over Katie, but his demeanor was eerily calm, too calm for a situation like this. Katie's face was pale, her voice trembling with raw emotion. "Go away, and never come back," she screamed, desperation laced in every word. The man exhaled slowly, his expression unreadable. When he spoke, his tone was unsettlingly composed, as though he had rehearsed every word in his head. "Well, I see you finally remember the lesson I taught you," he began in a measured voice. "I'm sorry about what happened back then. There was a misunderstanding between us. We never really got to know each other properly." He paused, glancing at me before shifting his gaze back to Katie. "My name is Oliver," he continued. 10 years ago, I was in love with Katie. We were serious about each other. But I was drafted into the army, and I had to leave to serve my country. After that, I went to college, but life kept pulling me away. My mother fell seriously ill, and I had to take care of her. When she passed, I was drafted into the army again at 25. By then, Katie had moved on. She told me she couldn't wait, and honestly, neither could I. But that didn't mean I stopped loving her. I felt my stomach tighten as his words sank in, but it was his next revelation that shattered everything. "Paul called me today," Oliver went on. "He said he was working at a kid's birthday party and saw a boy who looked just like me. Said the resemblance was uncanny. And you know what, Katie? He's right. That boy, Ron, he's my son." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Katie lowered her gaze, her shoulders tense as if she had been bracing for this moment all along. Then, in a voice devoid of emotion but tinged with regret, she spoke. "Honestly, you're right." A cold shiver ran down my spine. I turned to her, searching her face for some kind of denial, some sign that this was a mistake. But there was none. She inhaled deeply before continuing, her voice steady but distant. "I knew you would insist on a DNA test, and I was prepared for that. I never tried to hide the truth. Ron's biological father is Oliver." The air was sucked from my lungs. My world tilted. "I couldn't tell you 10 years ago because I wasn't sure myself," she admitted. "But as Ron grew older, the truth became impossible to ignore. I'm sorry, but now you understand. Everything I had built, every moment of happiness, suddenly felt like an illusion." The weight of her words crushed me, and I realized then that I had been living in a lie she had chosen to keep from me for years. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, my hands numb. I wanted to scream, to demand why she had let me believe Ron was mine, why she had allowed me to love him as a father when she knew the truth. But nothing came out. I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The next day, I filed for divorce. Maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. Maybe in another life, I could have found a way to move past it. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. Every time I looked at Ron, I saw Oliver's face staring back at me. I tried, I really did, but the betrayal was too deep. As for alimony, I didn't pay a cent. I proved in court that I wasn't Ron's biological father, and with that, I had no legal obligation. Katie was left to deal with everything on her own. Time passed, and eventually, I heard more about Oliver. He hadn't exactly been the devoted partner Katie had once believed him to be. He had spent years working in the northern regions, struggling to make ends meet. Somewhere along the way, he met someone else, a cook, a woman he apparently connected with. That was all it took. He divorced Katie and moved on, leaving her behind just as easily as she had left me. And as for me, I moved on too. I built a new life, one without the weight of deception pressing down on me. And over time, I did something I never thought possible. I forgot about Ron.